Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world-setting Golarion of the Pathfinder role-playing game system? Yes, heading back to Golarion once more to explore the lost continent. That's right, we're heading to Azlant. Are you ready to plane shift to Golarion? If so, join me, your host here today, your guide, if you will, Candace Naravan Dracovin, as I lead you through the multiverse, through the universe, to Azlant, back to Golarion. And remember, along the way, you can just help me out with a little bit of liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, and doing all that various things over on YouTube, if you're over there. Alright, let's plane shift. We're heading to Golarion, going through the portal. We've arrived at Golarion. Isn't that a nice portal? It's a fine portal. I mean, we could have a better portal, but look, I have low-budget portals. You asked for Tor, not for high-budget graphics. Thank you very much. Anyway, we're heading to Azlant. Well, what's left of Azlant. Because there is some things there, just not a lot. It got nuked from orbit. But talk about it. Anyway, what are some good sources to look into? Well, one of my main sources that I actually look through a lot of is the Ruins of Azlant Adventure Pack from 1st edition. I'd really highly recommend that one. That is a main book source that will give you a lot of information on this place. Granted, it's not the only source, but I would recommend that more than anything for a first look to get into a lot of this stuff here. It will give you a very good idea about what's going on in the region. Again, it only shows the initial stuff. It isn't like a full picture of everything. So just keep that in mind. But, yeah. Ruins of Azlant, one of the back end of Adventure Pass from 1st edition. Inner Sea World Guide, campaign settings, both of those from 1st edition does provide some information, and the World Guide also provides some information. But if those are just like some extras, a little bit more summaries of a lot of stuff, the deep dive would be into a lot of the extra material from the Adventure Pack. But let's start talking about Azlant, because this is the kind of look you would have in the most reasonable areas. Azlant is a lost continent, and technically speaking, this is a very rarity amongst Azlant. A lot of times there are very jagged cliffs, very deep trenches. These smaller islands are rare amongst the mess which is the lost continent. It was the source of the first human culture, the first true human culture on Golarion. It's not to say that there weren't other humans and other cultures that existed, but the Azlanti Empire, which existed on the Azlant continent, was the first major empire, the first true civilization of humanity on Golarion. Granted, it was brought together by the alien intelligence of the Agolthus, the Veiled Masters. Ogolthus is their own language. Veiled Master would be the simple terms of it, which still do exist today. And as the cultural and society grew by leaps and bounds, basically the leaders there thought them head above everything else, and the Ogolthus didn't like that, resulting in the retribution of the Starstone in negative 5,293 AR for the Absalom Reckoning. This was about 10,000 years ago. Starstone sunk the entire continent, condemned Golarion to the Age of Darkness. The planet was saved. We'll talk about that in the future, definitely a little bit more about it. But Azlant didn't survive. As much as the rest of the world survived the cataclysm that was the fall of the Starstone, the Earthfall. Azlant itself, the once mighty continent, is now just a string of islands and atolls across a swath of the Arcadian Sea. And these are the only bits that are left above the continent that are above sea level. The rest has either been shattered, sunk, destroyed in some kind of way. It was catastrophic more than anything for Azlant. It is a true lost continent. What's left of it? Now, this is only a small map of some islands. This is the islands that you use the Ruins of Azlant Adventure Pack. But this is an example of some of these islands. This is a lot of what it is. Smaller islands that are spread out in each individual. Basically, the continent is shattered. Lots of it has sunk beneath the sea. So, it's a maze of sea canyons, islands like Mordant Spire on the far edge are considered were originally part of Azlant, but are on their own. They're now more in Varisia. There are remains of only a few inhabited places. That was once the Great Continent. So that's one of those few places. The mainland was approximately 1,000 miles west from the Arch of Erin. So that's the entrance to the inner sea. Now it's a maze of cliffs, khors, jagged channels sticking out of the ocean, honeycombed with ancient passages topped with remnants or statues, buildings of ancient civilizations. Most are very inaccessible because you need ropes and pulleys to go up the cliff edges. The ocean floor is littered with wreckage of ships that are dashed against the sheer cliffs and shoals. As I said, that first picture is of Azlant, but it's one of the few rare areas where it's easy to get to shore. Most islands in Azlant are awful to travel to. Just awful. And require so much work. So much preparation. So much purpose. They're like cliff edges that you have to worry about your ship being dashed. Now, there are settlements here. Now, this is only one of the settlements. This is the latest settlement, Halmador's Bounty, which is part of the Azlant Adventure Path. This was formed. But there are some other places that do exist here to degrees. Acrolon exists here, sort of. Really, it's more in the ethereal plane, though it's kind of an Azlant, and its original members who are really in the ethereal plane have become wraiths. So you can find a version of the city there, but it's in ruins. Another one would be Mer Peretz. Well, that's one of the big islands. It's one of the tallest islands left over. Eridan's Rock, it's also called. It's said that's where the survivors of Earthfall basically had their exodus from the continent out to Grund and Avastian, led by Eridan. Effectively, that island still remains. Mer Peretz. And being the, one of the largest remaining islands there, it is a very important place. But now it's under the control of Vicious Fae and stuff. Supposedly a creature that was hostile but not an Olguthu that Eridan and his allies believed it was. Billith Vale. It's a large set of ruins left over, dedicated to one of the goddesses that sacrificed themselves to prevent Earthfall from being as devastating as it was. So it was dedicated to the goddess Akavana. She was one of the two that sacrificed her life to basically stop Earthfall from being as catastrophic. They didn't quite stop it, but they did stop it from destroying the entire planet. And so, yeah, now the city is over-controlled by her inanimous shade version of the lunar dragon she once held and the serpent's unknown. But the city's there. The city of Golden Gates, which I will get a little bit about, though. It was the original capital. You get into that a little bit in the Azlant Adventure Path. Yeah. There are still some beings that exist there, cultists and such. Halmador's Bounty, which was formed in 4717. Hey, only 7 years old. It was, of course, an Eridan colony. Basically surveyed the islands that they did in 4714. Found this island as one of the few places that they could settle. And so they did. There's more to that story. But this is a picture of it. It's one of the few existing actual, settlements on the islands. I will also preference, there are other aquatic-based settlements. Since a lot of the islands sunk, or is now below the waves, there are a lot of others that do technically live there. Basically, aquatic elves, Azarketi, merfolk, the Kali Oath can all be found in that region in various ways, and would have settlements and cities too. But again, its aquatic species rule the continent more than anything because they're what's left. The land is harsh, deadly. Now, this is actually taken from, I used the Pathfinder wiki. They have a really good map with a lot of information on it. I took an image of the kind of known map of the islands. It compiles a lot of information for their map for for use. So it's a mapping project, basically. It's under the community use and kind of puts it together. This is basically as accurate a map of the entire continent as we have seen. It's sort of like the area where the Roots of Atlant's adventure path is. I can't place it on here because we don't have a good place on here where it's at. That's why it isn't on this map. I tried to zoom into the areas and find it. I couldn't. Maybe you can find it, because zooming in a lot. But this is effectively, you can see there's old Cheliacs over on the side next to me, and the expanse down farther, and the Eye of Bandigo there. Kind of right below, in between those two, is of course the Arch of Aradin. You can kind of see on the side there, and yeah, you can see where the continent is just a bunch of islands as they are now. The thing is, if we talk about the history of the continent, beyond the Azlanti Empire, we don't know a lot. And I will probably have to do a video on the Azlanti Empire on their own and learn a lot of their stuff, but all we know is the story of destruction for this. It's believed that the Azlanti rose from slave pits of the Golthus, indicating their masters and engineered them from primitive human stocks, giving them intelligence power. There's no really evidence of that theory. Other theories say that they pretty much sent a nomadic or basically early humans during the path of advanced civilizations. It's really hard to say where it came from, but we do know that the Azlanti culture flourished over thousands of years on this continent in the Arcadian Ocean, at the heights of art, philosophy, science, previously undreamt of by humans, but had that influence of the Golthu. And it's not certain that even the highest ranking or most enlightened knew they were being manipulated by the Golthu until Earthfall became close, until their arrogance was so high that they began to cross across Earth. But it doesn't mean that there aren't major issues that have happened related to the Azlanti and the continent. The war with the Yattersis, with the Serpent Folk, the Seki, that resulted in Savath, an Azlanti hero, beheading the serpent god Yurgursis in the Darkland realm of Skimina, and banishing the serpent folk that had been on the surface down into the Darklands. Thassalon was formed as thankful of Azlanti in negative 6,530, which I will note is about 1,200 years before Earthfall. Thassalon was formed by exiles from Azlanti, led by Zin, powerful mage. They were even more arrogant than the Azlanti, believing that the lesser races of the world, that none of them could ever rival Azlanti's greatness. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was the opposite. He believed that the lessers could, if given a chance. That's why Zin was given up. Azlanti was awful. They believed that everyone else was below them and never would reach them. Zin was like, if they're given a chance, they could reach us. We should do something about that. But also, his way of doing something about that was not good. I'm not gonna lie. Azlanti, Thassalon, they're all really bad empires. They're very, I wouldn't call them evil empires, but they're not known for their generosity to anybody that's not them. Though, again, eventually Azlanti diplomatically reached a treaty with Thassalon because they saw that the Rune Wards were a threat, but they were turned away. Also, the Demon Lord Zura was said to be once a queen of Azlant, that lusted after eternal life, and after Earthfall, basically descended to a vampire succubus. So, yeah. These are little representations of history of Azlant, the continent, but it's one of those strange things is because Azlant is tied very deeply with the Azlanti Empire's history, we don't know, because we don't know a lot about the Azlanti Empire. Its overall history, we have snapshots of it, information from ruins and bits of their technology, their magic and stuff like that have especially been from other colonies spread out across the regions nearby. They settled more than just their continent. They had little colonies and places all over the place. They moved out. That's why a bunch of them moved to Varizia and formed the Thessalonian Empire when they were exiled, because they could travel. So there are places where you can see these snapshots of them. It's just without the support of the main continent, all those places fell. None of them were strong enough to be their own thing, unfortunately. Now we go forward to 4,246 AR, where the Sun Temple colony was formed. The Chelaxian province of Andoran sent a fleet of ships to build a colony on one of the remaining islands. 1,000 ships basically perished in the voyage, and the wreckage can be found near the coast. 200 survivors landed. They found an ancient temple dedicated to an Azlant sun god. They founded the Sun Temple colony. They kept it going over the centuries. Contact between the colony and Eridan became sparse, and by the late 44th century, the communication ceased into the early 45th century. The final message was incomprehensible, saying something about a weeping gate, warning of an inner eye in the mind of all of us, and then no one heard from them. There are strange lights coming from that island from time to time, and their ultimate fate is technically a mystery. They explained maybe like exposed places. Check out some storylines or some adventures to maybe figure out what happened to them. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah. So. Now, this woman here, as Azlant. Yeah. We're going to talk about the Azlanti people. She's alive today. She is one of the few ancient Azlanti left alive. An interesting little thing, though. We can talk about her briefly, but I'm usually using her as a good example of the existence of the Azlanti culture and technology and stuff like that. Well, so ancient Azlant was magically, technologically advanced. It had been the most up to that time that had ever existed for humans. In fact, there has not been a lot of things that have matched it. There are some few artifacts that remain from it. They find themselves in the inner sea region time to time, having great wonder. Their architectural style, their symbols have been copied from ruins, inspired countless cultures throughout. The renowned Aeon Stones, basically the Pathfinder version of Aeon Stones, if you are wondering, for those of you who are more in first edition / D&D, they're Aeon Stones now, are a magic that's left behind from them. They were believed to first develop there, and since the fall, no one has managed to match the knowledge of them. Pathfinder Society is enraptured with them and does look into them very much so. Now, we can look at our very nice lady here and talk about a little bit about the humans that were there. Well, it's not to say that there aren't any pure-blood Azlanti surviving to present day, per se. She was a time oracle. She got sent forward through time. 10,000 years. That's her story. It's as simple as that. It's a crazy story, but there are time oracles that can manipulate time. She ran into something that caused her to go forward in time a lot, into a world she does not understand. She's doing her best right now. But, again, she's a character that's an example character. We can talk about her more. That's not the difference. But, if we're talking about pure-blooded Azlanti that have survived outside of things that would put someone into suspended animation, locked in stone through stone to flesh, becoming undead, becoming a ghost, time traveling through magical or unusual means, just by being a people and a culture, none survive. Genetically, you find them in Taldanes, the Taldane ethnicity, and through their subgroups, very much so. You do find them that way. But, again, there aren't a lot left off. There are plenty of descendants of Azlanti, but their blood is gone. They were proud people with skin tones ranging from olive to pale white, commonly darker hair, high brows, receding hairlines, eyes from a deep purple color is very characteristic of them. And so if you're in the regions of descendants from Azlanti, having deep purple eyes is seen as very high. Eridan was supposed to be the last one that existed. He ascended to godhood. he's the closest that comes thing. And there are offshoots, more than just humans. And right now, again, the major inhabitants of this region are aquatic elves. As I said, then the merfolk and the Azarketi, who are also technically descendant of Azlanti humans. I think both of them technically are, but they're also influenced by them. And of course now you do have some normal humans there. But again, it's not to say that you couldn't rediscover some ancient place where there's some Azlanti people put the suspended animation as a storyline, and waking them up could cause some kind of issue. A Thing Out of Time story could definitely exist in the ancient ruins of the continent, because there are places that have survived. There are ruins that have existed. Ancient Azlanti Empire, its structures, its buildings, was made with magic and superior technology, and many of them that are in pieces of land that survived Earthfall still exist. Though in ruins or buried or under the sea, there is this entire thing of Azlant has influence even though it's gone. And I think that's a great place to put this here. The continent is gone, but the Empire and the continent itself has influence. Some of the creatures that were there remain. You can go take a look at the groups of bestiaries that are from the Ruins of Azlant Adventure Path. You see a bunch of example creatures that live in those regions. Those are descendants of creatures of that continent. Yes, probably a lot of creatures went extinct during that time. Anything that was unique to that region may or may not survive. The human population died out, became aquatic, or left. The ruins are still there. It's an interesting place because it is a place still, too. Azlant, the continent, it still technically exists. Yeah, a lot of it's below the water. A lot of it that you really see nowadays is that vast group of islands I showed you a picture of. That's what we think of when we think of Azlant now, because that's what's left. It is a shattered continent. It's also impressive. That's got to impress you how big a problem the Starstone falling, Earthfall being, was. Earthfall would have been so devastating to the planet. If it wasn't for the sacrifice of a couple gods, more than the continent would have probably been shattered. Getting away with just Azlant, the continent, being this shattered mess is impressive. And we can see the ramifications of everything related to Azlant. People, they'll go through, maybe they're not gone. The Deep Veiled Masters themselves are still trying to manipulate from behind the scenes. They're not as connected anymore. The effect that they had also affected them. Turns out, their plan didn't go as they wanted at all and kind of messed up for them too. Lost their influence. Humanity flourished. All the other intelligent species flourished. Their experiments have failed. It's a mess too. It's a mess for all of us, all people. But should you want to visit Azlant, should you want to explore the ruins, find out what's there, discover the secrets of it, deal with some of the underwater people that are there, maybe make deals to be able to do that. Some of them might not take kindly to visit it. Others, maybe you can make a deal with them. It's a thing that makes exploring there and traveling there a impressive thing. And certainly speaking, member of the Pathfinder Society, definitely high on that list of people that want to go there. And also might get easier to get some permissions. They oftentimes are better at negotiating those things rather than individuals. So if you just break in, the locals might not get kindly to that. From the Mordenspire elves to any of those aquatic species that don't want you messing with ancient things. There's a lot of people that want you, when you're going in there, keep an eye out on things, because again, it's that thought of, hey, the Azlanti Empire fell an apocalyptic event. They're often looking at for the source of this apocalypse. Granted, there's more to that story than that, although we kind of drop a giant rock on it. The decline of their empire, and causing basically the wrath of the universe, kind of thing like that. There's seen a lot of that. But again, there's good reason to be careful. And I will leave that there. I can go into more about it. But I did find talking about the continent very interesting, because there really isn't a lot there. Just like a single current known human colony, maybe another colony, a couple of underwater cities, and just a lot of ruins and adventures to be had. It makes the Ruins of Azlant a very interesting adventure path to think about running, you know? Maybe. It's a thing to keep in mind. Anyway, let me give my shout-outs before we end the day, before I head off. Remember, I have a schedule. If you want to check me out live over on Twitch or join me later on YouTube, I have my schedule up on Discord, Twitter/X, and over on my YouTube channel. It just tells you the general times I'm live on Twitch and when I upload things on YouTube. The YouTube upload schedule is usually pretty good. Twitch one varies from day to day because of life stuff. I do have social media, the Discord, Twitter/X that I mentioned, because that's where I talk about news of the week, or I give basically updates, things like that, chat about stuff, tactics. Remember to like, subscribe, and the bell for the video. If you're over on YouTube, follow if you're over on Twitch. Crimson Queen. Live play Pathfinder 1st Edition. We're almost done it. Wednesdays at 8. Check that out. And discuss and paperback Saturdays at 6. We talk about news of the week, deeper special topics, all that kind of stuff. All related to it. Alright, I'm going to get going. I think that's all the shoutouts I have. I'm so glad to make this video. You know, it's fun. Hey, I do have a question here. Have you run the Ruins of Azlant Adventure Path, or have my words inspired either one character you want to go explore them, or perhaps if you were a game master for you to run something? I'd be curious as to if you've got any cool ideas now that I talked about it. So, anyway, until the next time we chat, go over stuff like this, anything like that, I bid all of you out there a deep and farewell.